Sergio, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you here because you have something to say about being a CTO. You co-founded five companies before you were 25 years old. Three of them are still running up until today. You also wrote a book called the CTO Toolbox. So there is a lot. And now you are working as the head of AI and quantum computing at Moody's. So when I kind of think about quantum computing, I thought, hey, we should just talk about it. But let's stick to our topic of CTOs, what they can do better, how to become an awesome CTO, how to transition from a CTO in a smaller company to a larger organization. So yeah, just coming back to the book CTO Toolbox, like what's the major takeaway? What would you like every CTO to know about?
Awesome. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here today. I always love to talk with colleagues and other CTOs and technical people alike, and share my knowledge, the good and the bad, on my journey on CTOing in that sense. And that is precisely why I wanted to write this book, because back then when I had my very first CTO gig in a very small startup, and there were like three of us in the technical team. There was absolutely no formal education or knowledge of A, what is the chief technical officer? B, how do you become one? And C, how do you progress and keep continuous education on that? So you basically had to learn on the job, right? And what happened to many of us that come from engineering roles is that we think that, and maybe that's, I guess, the main takeaway from the book. We think that becoming a CTO is the next step in our career ladder, right? You are a junior developer, a mid-level, senior, maybe staff engineer, VP of engineer, and you become a CTO as the natural next step. And boy, I was so wrong thinking that, because it's not really the next step in your technical career. It's more like a side step on your management career. Now, this was many years ago. Back then, if you wanted to, especially in Europe, if you wanted to progress in your career and make more money, you had to go into management. And there was a glass ceiling for software developers in the industry, especially for female software developers, but also for males. So if you wanted to progress, then you had to go into product management, project management, become a pre-sales engineer, and so on. This was like a couple of decades ago. Luckily now, many companies, not all of them, but many companies have like a technical career track. So if what you want to do is just code and be the best engineer, the best specialist of something, you can still grow and progress without necessarily going into management. But if you still want to go into management, the main first lesson or lessons learned is that being a CTO, a VP of engineering, or a senior technology leader is about business and about communication and not about technology itself. And that's a big gap, because when we are engineers, we like determinism, right? We are used to code, and if something fails, it's definitely our fault because we didn't write the proper code. So we go in and find that semicolon that we missed, or find that bug that we introduced, or that test that is breaking on our build. The error is always going to be between the keyboard and the sit and the chair. But when you go into management, suddenly you don't have deterministic problems anymore. Now you have human situations that are much more different, right? You may be working with someone who's brilliant but has a really bad day, and you have to deal with a human situation that you cannot deal with in a deterministic way. You have to deal with it with empathy and with communication and with sensibility and so on. And then you go into your senior leadership meeting with the other C-level executives, and you try to tell them about the technical depth that you have, or about the test suite that is not complete because you don't have proper coverage on your code or stuff like that. And they will not hear you. They want to know about your capex evolution, about what kind of issues you have on your team and the throughput of the team, and when you will have the next release ready, and why is not it's supposed to happen is not happening. So it's almost like speaking a different language. And I wanted to write that book to tell people, especially the CTOs that come, like was my case from engineering, that yes, technology is one of your big pillars, and obviously we need to be technical to be able to coordinate and manage a team of engineers, because we need to build rapport with our team members. That doesn't mean that we have to be the smartest and best developers in the room. In fact, it should be the other way around. Ideally, we would surround by ourselves by really smart people that are really good at doing their job. Is picking the right framework, doing the right infrastructure, coding the best code, and so on.
Hmm. It's really interesting that you say it, because some people say that business people don't care about technology at all. So, based on your experience, would you say they don't care, or they don't have the appreciation for what we do in the IT, or is it somewhere in between?
I think it's somewhere in between. I've been very lucky myself to be able to work with CEOs who were they were not necessarily technologists, but they appreciated the complexities of technology. Eh, but I think there's a middle point where the communication needs to happen, right? And this is like if you try to go into the middle of, I don't know, rural China and try to communicate in plain, fast English without making any effort, you're not going to communicate. Likewise, the person in front of you is going to speak Chinese, and there's nothing is going to happen. Now you can try to, speak differently or use hand gestures and maybe use a translator, and then you can get stuff going. Something similar happens at the board in that sense. So one of the examples I always use, and it's in the book, is about technical debt. We typically measure technical debt in a variety of ways, maybe on our OKRs, maybe about the throughput of our system, maybe about the lines of code that are rotting and so on. There's many ways of measuring it, but most of those metrics are purely technical. So one of the things I typically say, and sometimes half of the room goes against me, is that the technical debt is a CFO metric. It's not the CTO responsibility. But let me clarify. It is the CTO responsibility, but you measure it in money. Meaning technical debt is more debt than technical. And in the moment you measure it in dollars, and you could quantify it like any other type of debt, then suddenly it becomes the CFO interest and the CEO interest. What is technical debt at the end of the day? Our code base is growing so large and maybe untamed that at some point the interest that we have to pay for maintaining that eats our throughput for creating more principal. So I'm sure we all have lived through that, right? That it gets into a point where maintaining the system and fixing bugs and putting out fires takes absolutely every single man hour that we have in the team. And the solution is never adding more people in the team, because that just makes the problem bigger. The solution is, can we take a step back and clean up some technical debt, either by refactoring code, re-architecturing pieces, putting up better test framework, or adding more tests, maybe microservicing the infrastructure. There's lots of opinions here, right? And different situations. But at the end of the day, it's about how do you repay your principal so the interest gets lower, and then you can keep investing on building new features, which is what your product team and your CEO want at the end of the day. Now, if you explain technical debt in terms of how many story points you're dedicated into fixing that or writing tests, which I think is a big mistake, to have tests individual tasks, saying, no, this is one additional thing that we need to do. No, that's part of the development process, right? So if you keep talking about technical debt that way, it's going to be hidden. It's going to be in a different language that the CFO will not be able to understand. But if you go to the CFO and you say, look, we have a team of 25 engineers, for example, and only 2 of them are actually able to produce new features or new work on this huge backlog of things that we have or that need things that we need to do for our clients, then that means that only 2 out of 35 or 25, whatever I said, is the actual throughput on how you measure and manage your team. And that can be converted into dollars because you know how much each of those engineers cost, you know how much you're investing on that, and therefore adding a single new feature is costing you 23 times more than if you started from a net new platform, right? So for me, that is the type of communication that the CTOs need to learn how to do. How to speak with the board, how to speak with the leadership team, how to explain things in the same language, which is the language of profit and loss statement or a balance sheet, how your OPEX and CAPEX is organized and structured. And when I say this, sometimes CTOs look at me with weird faces saying, what are you talking about? Our job is to build awesome products. And yes, that as well. But as a company, you have a responsibility with your shareholders and stakeholders, right? And those things, whether they are the clients or the board or the investors that give you money, are things that pay your salaries and the things that help you give you the things that give you the juice to build that product. It's a really tight balance and very difficult.
Yeah.
At the same time, you have to look into the team and you cannot go into the team and tell them about the P&L.
Yeah.
You have to translate again those needs, those things. Like maybe sometimes when we have bad news, for example, we have to, I don't know, we don't have budget to hire the team that we wanted to hire, or maybe even worse things, we have to lay off some people because, I don't know, we don't have any more money. Or we have a change of a strategy and we're not going to build that mobile app anymore. Instead, we're going to focus on that B2B enterprise application or anything that you want. You will have to translate that company vision into technology terms that can create empathy with the team.
Yeah.
So all in all, you're continuously switching your hat and moving from one room to another. And then given that communication with them, you become a translator of sorts.
Awesome. Well, this is really interesting. And you mentioned some of the financial terms, right? OPEX, CAPEX, and some of the CTOs who are listening to this now, they may wonder, okay, how do I learn all of this? Of course, they can probably learn some of this in your book, the CTO Toolbox. They can obviously open Wikipedia or whatever, right? But is there any structured program or some course that you would recommend, something that you saw other people enroll in?
So unfortunately not. I haven't seen like a proper master in business for technology people. Myself, I did an MBA. So I'm this kind of CTO who did an MBA, but I was the only CTO in the room. All my classmates and good friends that now I have, this was many years ago, they came from, you know, the McKinseys of the world and different companies, and they were on marketing and sales. They were general managers, really smart people. But I was the only one coming from technology, meaning the principles of finance that I got at the general level. So I had one book that is still my biggest recommended book for everyone. It's called Principles of Corporate Finance. I'm sorry, it's a book that every MBA recommends, and that helped me not only on my CTO job, but also as a business angel and investor and dealing with other investors, private equities, and so on, to understand a lot of things that before I was oblivious to. Unfortunately, we have to go the hard way because there are no programs that sort of modify that for the view of a technical person. But the one thing that always works great is to actually go to the CFO and ask him or her, hey, can you explain to me how this actually works? Typically, we're very afraid of showing, I don't know, the weakness of not knowing something, right? Maybe that's a cultural thing, but and the CFOs of the companies are sometimes, not always, but sometimes are kind of in there, and the role that we typically interact the least. Right, CTOs mostly we work with the chief product officers, with sales, with the CEO, but with the CFO, It's only when there is something going on, right?
Yeah, yeah. Only when
Um,
there are issues.
exactly. When you need to cut costs, when you need
Yeah.
to I don't know, capitalize something, when you need to do some type of compliance elements, it differs company by company, of course. But first of all, they're normal humans. They're normal people, usually really smart in order to be where they are, right? And like almost everyone, they love to explain their trade. So most of the stuff that I've learned about finance and accounting and investments and so on came from the CFOs I've worked with in my life. And by me going to them and saying, hey, I don't understand the debt situation that we have in the company and how we're leveraging it and what these investors are doing to us. Can you give me a primer on how all this works? So I can understand better our situation and I can understand better how to run those things. If I understand that, then I can translate that not necessarily into the team. There are things that you will not tell the team, but I can adapt that into my strategy. Imagine I have grandiose plans of multiplying by 10 the team size because I want to create the mother of all the, I don't know, applications with the whole thing and so on. And I want to build all that. But when I understand the financial metrics of my company, I can realize that that simply would never work because the economies of that don't work, at least how we're envisioning them. By understanding that, I can put on more informed or smart comments when I go and speak with the CEO and the rest of the C-level executives. I will not look like an idiot, and I will be able to design a strategy that's much more tied to that situation. So, in my experience, the best is to actually build a good relationship with your CFO, with your CEO, and ask the questions that you don't know about. And it's perfectly fine to not know how your preferential equity is structured and how you're converting debt into equity, or why are you doing that kind of accounting game so that the company doesn't default in 3 months,
Mm.
which is at the end of the day what many companies have to do in the startup and scale up stage.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's so true. And besides the this communication with the intent to learn, I guess the cross-functional communication is also important. So, with regards to leadership and communication, what would you say really differentiates the good from great when it comes to being a CTO?
So that's a fantastic question and a very difficult one to answer, I guess. You can look at this from the achievement perspective, like what have we done in our life? What have we done with this team? I think the first and most important part is to know thyself, right? Know who you are, in what type of environments you thrive, and what are the type of teams that you work better with. Um, Same as CEOs and as any other C-level executive, you can be a wartime CTO or a peacetime CTO. And I think for me, that's the most important thing to understand. How do you work the best? You can join a company as a CTO where everything is in in ruins and you have to rebuild the team, rebuild the architecture, everything is broken. I'm sure many of you have seen these situations, and then you create task forces and teams and rebuild everything from the ground up and so on. Or you can be the type of marathon runner that joins a company and says, okay, the table stakes are okay, we have a business model, everything is kind of working, but now we have to scale it up to 5x or 10x. So how do you run this marathon instead of sprint? The most important thing is knowing oneself. How do you organize and run your teams in that sense? Are you a hustler of a small startup doing everything quickly and quick and dirty? Or do you prefer like good structure elements, build good code, resilient, because this is going to have to last for many, many, many years? The second one is having amazing relationship with the other C-level executives.
Mm.
The only great CTOs that I've seen are the ones that have like perfect relationship with the CPO, not the ones that are CTPOs or CPTOs, but when there has been the two roles reporting to the CEO, and with amazing relationship between the two of them. As in CPO and CTO allied, going into the CEO and saying, look, we need investment on this specific area. We agreed. This is why we're doing it, and this is how we're going to do it. And let us do our job. That is what you get from when you integrate situations. If instead what you have a relationship is a relationship with your product person, where you're all the time fighting between fixing technical debt, releasing new features, doing this properly, not doing this quickly, it's always going to be a tug of war. And the one losing is going to be the company and the customers. And of course, in the end, the company down the line, obviously. So that's another really important point from the book. When I ask CTOs, I do a lot of coaching for CTOs, right? And when I ask them, who are your team members? Everyone always says, yeah, of course, my tech leads or my engineering managers and directors and all the team, whether they have 5 people in their team or 300, they will always say, this is my team. And that is only partially true. That's the team that works with you, but your actual team, the people that you speak with 99% of the time, the people that you spend your time with, the people you lobby with, and so on, are the other C-level executives, the people you sit at the table with. And those are the people that you have to build a fantastic relationship with. And not always, right? Sometimes you will have to do some politics and so on, depending on the company and the size. But at the end of the day, as a CTO, that's what will take most of your time, and really understanding those things, communicating, supporting, and providing support to others in that sense. And then, of course, you have your team members, who are the ones who help you create all that. So that's another mindset change or click that people has to change in their minds. It's like, if you're spending more time with your VPs of engineering or your directors than with your C-level executives, you're missing a lot. And that doesn't mean that things are not happening. It means that they are happening without you, because you're not sitting at the table where things actually happen. And then that affects your team, of course, and affects the product and so on. So it's really, really, really important to make that difference and be able to be in both places. I met with a CTO once who said, I don't have time for that. I need to be on all the team stand-ups for my teams. And I'm like, are you attending all your team stand-ups? Why would you do that? Give them freedom. Hire smart people and let them do, and then verify, sure. But just let them do. Your job is to be with an umbrella, protecting them from, pardon my words, but protecting them from the shit raining down. But then at the same time with the whip, making sure that they do the best job of their lives in that sense, right? And work with the other C-level executives. I think those are the things that I would classify as levers to go from good to great.
Awesome. Well, I really like how you started with knowing yourself as the typical kind of person who either thrives in smaller company or larger, or in good times or worse times. But I'm now thinking from the recruiter or headhunter perspective. You know, often we need to find people who are one of these 2 or 4 categories, but when we open someone's resume or LinkedIn profile, we only see the role, right? CTO. So have you seen any interesting ways how people communicate their strengths and the ideal next role for this sake?
Right. That is, I guess, the sin of the CTOs, right? I guess if you ask a random sample of humans what a CEO is, with different wordings, but everyone will kind of coalesce into the general manager, the representative of the board in a company that's the ultimate responsible for the revenue, the driving success to the shareholders, to the clients, and so on. That there's going to be many definitions, but everyone would agree on what a CEO is, regardless of the size of the company. Generally speaking, the same could be said for the chief revenue officer or the heads of sales, chief marketing officer, right? Depending on whether you do a B2B, B2C, and so on. But roughly speaking, the head of sales or chief revenue officer is always going to be the main responsible person to go out and sell the product
Yeah.
within your industry. But if I ask, what is the main role of a CTO? I think you're going to find as many definitions as people out there,
Mm-hmm.
even within our own ecosystem. If you ask technical people, right, you go and ask an individual contributor, a software developer with 5, 6, 7 years of experience or 10, and probably this person has seen a different type of CTO for every CTO he has met or she has met or worked with, and so on. So I think that's a very important point, that because there is not a super clear, common worldwide definition of a CTO, how do we sell ourselves? As we were talking before, you have to know, what do you want, at least? Do I want to work for a smaller startup? Do I want to work for a large corporate? And if so, what are my steps to get into those type of roles? Unfortunately, the only thing that we have is our personal branding, our CV, and the network that we build. And I guess that those are really the three weapons that we have. Personal branding is I guess a choice, but it's also part of communication. If you're building a network as I don't know, as a public speaker, if you write books or articles or something, many of us do write our blogs or have, I don't know, appear on podcasts like this one or some YouTube channels. I think harnessing all that so that it works towards what you want to do in life is really, really important. For example, if you were to ask me about my personal opinions or how would I implement a hexagonal architecture and or TDD or stuff like that, I would say, well, I could have an opinion, but it's definitely not my cup of tea because it has been ages since I've done those type of things. But if we speak about how to become a CTO and mentoring and so on, that's more aligned with sort of the branding that I've built and I'm building around myself, right? So when a recruiter calls me and say, "Hey, Sergio, I have a great opportunity for you as a Java developer," then that's not on me, right? It's on that person that maybe used an automated system, and I'm sure many of you have seen, have faced this situation. If that happens with software developers, and yes, because I did a lot of Java in my life, in my past, and in my CV on my LinkedIn, possibly I still have that there, right? But if we don't send the right signals, then we're going to get the wrong opportunities. It's kind of the type of lag that is about being in the right place at the right moment. That's something that you build. On the CV, I think the bio that you use, how you introduce yourself, and how you explain the things that you have done is really, really important. So no one likes to waste time. Not ourselves, not the headhunters and recruiters, not the companies. So if you can avoid those false positives, that would be ideal. And I guess the last point is, if you're looking for a CTO gig on a startup, like your first 2 or 3 gigs as a CTO, that's more like a technical lead or a director of engineering that's managing a team of maybe 5, 10, 15, something until 25 to 50 people tops. That's when you still have a finger or two in the mix, when you still, maybe you're lucky and have a finger on the code, maybe you still attend some of those stand-ups and so on. That puts you in a specific profile. So say that very clearly and out loud. I am a CTO that likes to go into companies that are still on their product market fit discovery phase. That will also fit into the type of salaries that you will get, the type of equity that you will get. Or on the contrary, I am the type of CTO that replaces founders. So what the typical story, I did that in my life a few times already successfully. When you are an early stage founder or co-founder or the technical co-founder, and sometimes it's your first job, you have a fantastic idea, you build an amazing thing, you build some product market fit, you raise capital, the thing starts growing, and suddenly you realize that you were a developer or maybe a researcher, and suddenly you have to manage 80 people in your team. and you have never done that, maybe you don't even want to do that. You want to stay in the lab doing your gig stuff. Um, so then that's when the board brings in another CTO that is a manager. And the same goes for the CEO, by the way. So it's kind of a reboot on the executive committee on bringing managers instead of founders. And sometimes it's keeping the founders on board and doing what they want, which is, I don't know, research or creating other type of stuff, or maybe moving them away. Are you that type of CTO? The one that comes in and gets a team that maybe is working fantastically well, but does not scale. Maybe it is in disarray because that person never gave them the care they wanted, or maybe there's no problem whatsoever and you just need to take it to the next level. Some people love that, some people hate that. Or are you the type of CTO that needs to bring a company to the IPO or to the exit? In which case your job is to do a lot of cleanup, a lot of financial improvements, a lot of team structure and organizational design, and eventually due diligence, depending on who you're selling that company to. Say that very clearly. So when you get into that moment, it's not so much about the companies that you've worked with, the typical sequential CV that you see, I've worked here, but more about the specific achievements that you have done. So have you built a team from scratch on the house CTO? Have you scaled it up to a product market fit team with a couple of dozens of engineers, a building CTO? Have you made it to the scale up stage, neighborhood CTO? Have you sold your company and now manage several hundred engineers or even up to 1,000? Are you a city CTO? Are you the CTO of a Fortune 500 with, I don't know, 10,000 engineers? You're a country CTO in that sense, right? And do you want to be there? So to summarize, I guess the message that you share on UCV, the brand that you create around yourself. In my case, I have my brand is the Pirate CTO. That's my website. That's where I put all my stuff. The piratecto.com. That's where I put my book and so on. It also has this angle of not so corporate-y, but enough. And then the network and the relationship that you build with people around you. Who do you know? That's at the end of the day one of the things that matters. So if I can dive a bit deeper into that one, as developers, we kind of build, many of us build some distance with headhunters, right? Especially in the good days when we got headhunters calling our door every single week for completely unrelated jobs, right? And we knew that they were, of course, going to get a cut from our from our payment or from the companies, and I know many engineers who ignore them or even answer them angrily or something like that, right? And I think that's a really bad idea. And sure, maybe they're making you waste time. I understand that. But first of all, they're humans, right? And second, they can also help in the next stage of your career. They can have ears out there and know what is happening with the industry, which companies are hiring, which companies are laying off people. So as a matter of fact, one of the best ways to know what was going on has been my network of little birds, all these recruiters and headhunters, because I knew before anybody else that a given company was laying off people, for example. So I could go and hire them directly.
Awesome. Well, this is really insightful, and I have seen lots of engineers who really say impolite words to recruiters when they reach out to them, which, as you say, is not really a good idea. And coming back to those CTOs who would like to reposition themselves and make it really clear for others what is their ideal job. I'm also thinking about one of our clients who, for example, managed or manages right now about 30 people, would like to get to the next level, but the question is really what the next level is, because he doesn't want to start again a startup from scratch or be the CTO with 2 engineers, but he's not ready to work for a corporation because he doesn't know the jargon, the financial stuff, and he doesn't have the experience leading a team of 100+ engineers. So how to go about figuring out what the next step actually is for someone who has this kind of experience?
Right. I think the only way is doing it on the job. So as you're saying, if you're the CTO running a team of 50 engineers, it's going to be very difficult to get hired to run a 500 people engineering team. It's going to be very difficult. Maybe it can happen, but it's not going to be easy because the recruiter and the hiring manager on the other side would want you to demonstrate that you have done that before.
Yeah.
And you can build applications in Ruby as a side project or anything, and you can build that yourself, but you cannot mock running an organization of 500 engineers. You really need to be on the job in there. So I think the easiest way, or what has worked for me, has been doing that on the job. Or that is really, really important, the job that you take and how much of a catapult is going to be. So what I mean by this is, let's say you have two options of companies to work. And this is especially important in your first, say, 15 years of your career, maybe until your 30s, mid 30s or something. You have on one side one company that's nice, is working well, they give you amazing salary, maybe some equity, you have to travel, but just a little bit. So it's a really nice, comfortable company, but it's going to have a very linear growth, but it's going to be stable. And on the other side, you have another opportunity that pays you shit. And maybe you will have some conflicts and all that, but if they pull it off, there's going to be exponential growth. So sometimes you need to take a hit on jobs that normally you wouldn't take, but will help you move from this team of 25 to a potential team of 300. And then you will fail miserably at that, guaranteed. And I'll get into how to solve that in a second. But I think that's very, very, very relevant. Likewise, maybe you're working on a team of 300 people and you want to take it to the next step. You probably won't land a corporate job for something similar. But if you choose a company that has high chances of being sold to a larger corporation, then that's your big door into that field. Maybe you sell to a private equity. Maybe you get acquired by another player or by an industrial investor. So all in all, choose a job for what the next job is going to be. Maybe you really want to excel at something because the board is asking you to join that company to save it, and then that board is going to unlock the very next thing to go afterwards. So don't look at just the present conditions, but what the risks and the future conditions will be. That means that sometimes you have to roll back, and maybe you spend 6 months somewhere and you realize, oh damn, this is not going to work, and that's fine as long as you leave things in good terms and you don't leave anyone on a deserted island. But I think that's the best way to get there. And the second one that's also related, the second point that's also related to what we were talking about before is, how do you take those chances with no educational support, no course on how to become a city-sized CTO, not a lot of support groups, because some things you cannot just go and ask your CEO, hey, I don't know how to do this. No, you're expected to know how to do this, right? You cannot get help from your team members either in some cases. Like, okay, I need to organize a restructuring force and lay off 20% of my team. You cannot go to your director of engineering to get neither tactical, neither emotional support. Or maybe for a positive thing, you're selling the company and it's going to be a good sale, but you have to do a lot of technical due diligence, and you have to do that yourself. You cannot go and ask the team, hey guys, we're selling the company. Can we prepare all these documents? So with all this, I think the thing that has helped me the most has been uh, building a really good team of or a really good network of CTOs of all sizes and experiences and all that, almost like psychologists or coaches and mentors, people that you can go and cry on their shoulders when needed. And it can be just a group of people that you meet every month for dinner, and you go and complain about life and everything, or you go with them to go to them with a question on, hey guys, I have this challenge, and we have this cone of silence here, or chat hand rules or whatever. um, that can be really, really good to understand that, one, you're not alone, there's many more people in a similar situation. That can also help avoiding burnouts, and living a bit better in that sense, and also having that sort of support, or whenever you take the next step, either organically or because you really got that opportunity.
Well, this is really insightful, and these CTOs can probably also help to get the next job because they may know about someone leaving, and yes, it's
Exactly.
interesting. It's interesting how everything is interconnected, and once we step out of the bubble, lots of new opportunities arise.
It's all about selling, right? Some people say, no, we engineers, we have an allergy to sales. We don't like to go and sell stuff. And that can be true to some extent. But when you're doing a job interview, you're selling yourself.
Mm.
When you're trying to convince the CEO to give you more budget to do something, or to give you time to deprecate a certain component of the platform, you're selling that idea. We can say that, no, it's building a PowerPoint or building some ideas, or some financial scenarios or what, but that's selling at the end of the day. When you speak with that recruiter, when you do a conference or a presentation and you try to convince everyone that, I don't know, microservices is the way or monoliths are the way, you are selling. Uh, so moving into management means start selling continuously.
Well, this is a great advice, and I feel like I could listen to you for the next 1 or 2 hours. But also, we are running out of time for our 1 hour scheduled.
Next
So
one in quantum.
yeah, exactly. Next time we should dive deeper to this quantum computing. But before we wrap it up, is there any kind of final advice that you would like to share with fellow CTOs who are looking for new opportunities? Some of them actively, some of them passively, some of them consider a career change, some of them, just wonder what's next for me. Like, is there anything that you think everyone should know about?
I think is embrace the opportunities, speak with as many people as you can, be always open-minded to opportunities, and be always willing to help. What goes around comes around. So one of the things that helped me the most in my life is when I did something pro bono, or because I just was willing to help. And then some years later, that came back as an opportunity, or as something that was an amazing opportunity in my life. Um, and then work on those soft skills, right? On selling, on communication, on being surrounded by people and translating, as we have been discussing. But stay tech, and
Hmm.
keep a finger or two, even if it's on the weekends. Be still that geek that loved engineering and that started developing because we love to create new things from the ground up. And if you like this, then I invite you to take a look at my book, the CTO Toolbox. All the proceeds go to NGOs in Barcelona, teaming.net and Migra Code Barcelona. They do amazing boot camps for refugees to train them into engineering roles. So it's amazing the work that they're doing, and it's really a pleasure to work towards helping people on this. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, on my website, thepiratecto.com, and rock on.
Awesome. So just reiterate the name of the book is the CTO Toolbox, and it's on Amazon, right? And
That's correct.
I will also include the link to your LinkedIn profile and the website you mentioned, piratecto.com.
Thepiratecto.com. But also, if you look for me on LinkedIn, Sergio Gago, it's really easy to find me. I keep bugging people about quantum computing, which is going to transform things even more than generative AI.
Oh wow, even
Uh,
more.
so that's always stay geeky and always look for what the future brings to us, and do awesome things.
Awesome. Well, next time on quantum computing. But for now, thanks a lot for all these insights, and I hope to see you soon again.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.